Hello, friends. If this joke tickled your funny bone, don't forget to hit subscribe. It's an easy way to keep the humor flowing into your feed. Don't miss the last one. That is special joke for you.
One day, on their 30-year anniversary, a fairy appeared at the home of a 60-year-old married couple and said to the husband, "I understood from your wife that you were a model husband throughout your marriage, and I would like to fulfill a wish of yours in honor of your anniversary." The husband smiled and said to his wife, "I am sorry, my beloved wife, but such an opportunity won't come again." He turned to the fairy and said, "For the next few years I want to spend time with a woman 30 years younger than me." The fairy smiled and said, "That's exactly what I thought you'd answer." The fairy winked at the woman, waved her magic wand, and turned the husband into a 90-year-old man. There was once a magician on a cruise ship who performed mainly sleight-of-hand tricks. He had a regular spot on the ship's cabaret evening entertainment. He was actually quite a good magician, but his routines were regularly ruined by the onboard parrot, who would fly around squawking out and giving away his secrets like, "It's up his sleeve! It's up his sleeve!" Or, "It's in his pocket, it's in his pocket," or, "It's in his mouth, it's in his mouth." The magician was getting pretty sick of this and threatened to kill the parrot if it ruined his act one more time. That evening, right at the climax of his act, just as he was about to disappear in a puff of smoke, the ship hit an iceberg and sank in seconds. Amazingly, the magician and the parrot were the only two survivors. The magician was lying on a piece of driftwood in a daze. As he opened his eyes, he could see the parrot staring at him out of its beady little eye. The parrot sat there for hours just staring at him and eventually said, "Okay, I give up. What did you do with the ship?" Not too long ago, there was a woman who wanted to know how her husband would react if she left without telling him where she had gone. She decided to write him a letter saying she was tired of him and didn't want to live with him anymore. After writing the letter, she put it on the table in the bedroom and then climbed under the bed to hide until her husband got home. When he eventually came back home, he saw the letter on the table and read it. After a few moments of silence, he picked up the pen and added something to the letter. Then he started to get changed, whistling happy tunes and singing and dancing while he did so. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number. His wife listened from under the bed as he started chatting with someone. "Hey, babe, I'm just changing clothes." "Then I will join you," he said. As for the other fool, it finally dawned on her that I was fooling around on her and left. I was really wrong to have married her. I wish you and I had met earlier. See you soon, honey." Then he hung up and walked out of the room. In tears and very upset, she climbed out from under the bed and stumbled over to read what her unfaithful husband had written on the end of her letter. Through teary and bleary eyes, she read, "I could see your feet, you idiot. I'm going out to buy some bread." A man and a woman who had never met before, but who were both married to other people, found themselves assigned to the same sleeping room on a transcontinental train. Though initially embarrassed and uneasy over sharing a room, they were both very tired and fell asleep quickly, he in the upper bedroom and she in the lower. At 1 a.m., the man leaned down and gently woke the woman, saying, "Ma'am, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you be willing to reach into the closet to get me a second blanket? I'm awfully cold." "I have a better idea," she replied. "Just for tonight, let's pretend that we're married." "Wow, that's a great idea," he exclaimed. "Good," she replied. "Get your own blanket." After a moment of silence, he farted. The end. Two 70-year-old men had been friends all of their lives. When it was clear that Frank was dying, Joe visited him every day. One day Joe said, "Frank, we both loved playing golf all our lives, and we started playing soon after high school. Please do me one favor. When you get to heaven, somehow you must let me know if there's golf there." Frank looked up at Joe from his deathbed and said, Joe, you've been my best friend for many years. If it's at all possible, I'll do this favor for you." Shortly after that, Frank died. A few weeks later, Joe was awakened from a sound sleep by a blinding flash of white light and a voice calling out to him. "Joe, Joe!" "Who is it?" asked Joe, sitting up suddenly. "Who is it?" "Joe, it's me, Frank." "You're not Frank. Frank just died." "I'm telling you, it's me, Frank," insisted the voice. "Frank, where are you?" "In heaven," replied Frank. "I have some really good news and a little bad news." "Tell me the good news first," said Joe. "The good news," Frank said with joy and enthusiasm, "is that there is golf in heaven. Better yet, all of our old buddies who died before me are here too. Even better than that, we're all young again. Better still, it's always summertime, and it never rains. And best of all, we can play golf all we want, and we never get tired. And we get to play with all the greats of the past." "That's fantastic," said Joe. "It's beyond my wildest dreams." "So what's the bad news?" "You're in my foursome this Saturday. Life is uncertain. Eat your dessert first." A little old lady went to the grocery store to buy cat food. She picked up 4 cans and took them to the checkout counter. The girl at the cash register said, "I'm sorry, but we cannot sell you cat food without proof that you have a cat. Saturday. A lot of old people buy cat food to eat, and the management wants proof that you are buying the cat food for your cat." The little old lady went home, picked up her cat, and brought it back to the store. They sold her the cat food. The next day, she tried to buy 2 cans of dog food. Again, the cashier said, "I'm sorry, but we cannot sell you dog food without proof that you have a dog. A lot of old people buy dog food to eat, but the management wants proof that you are buying the dog food for your dog." So she went home and brought in her dog. She then was able to buy the dog food. The next day, she brought in a box with a hole in the lid. The little old lady asked the cashier to stick her finger in the hole. The cashier said, "No, you might have a snake in there." The little old lady assured her that there was nothing in the box that would harm her. So the cashier put her finger into the box and quickly pulled it out. She said to the little old lady, "That smells like poop." The little old lady said, "It is. I want to buy 3 rolls of toilet paper." A courtroom in Oklahoma where a person is on trial for murder. There is strong evidence indicating guilt. However, there is no corpse. In the defense's closing statement, the lawyer, knowing that his client is guilty and that it looks like he'll probably be convicted, resorts to a clever trick. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have a surprise for you all," the lawyer says as he looks at his watch. "Within 1 minute, the person presumed dead in this case will walk into this courtroom," he says, and he looks toward the courtroom door. The jury, somewhat stunned, all looked on eagerly. A minute passes. Nothing happens. Finally, the lawyer says, "Actually, I made up the previous statement. But you all looked on with anticipation. I therefore put it to you that there is reasonable doubt in this case as to whether anyone was killed and insist that you return a verdict of not guilty." The jury, clearly confused, retires to deliberate. A very few minutes later, the jury returns, and a representative pronounces a verdict of guilty. "But how?" inquires the lawyer. "You must have had some doubt. I saw all of you stare at the door." Answers the representative, "Oh, we did look. But your client didn't." In the days of the Wild West, there was a young cowboy who wanted more than anything to be the greatest gunfighter in the world. He practiced every minute of his spare time, but he knew that he wasn't yet first-rate, and that there must be something he was doing wrong. Sitting in a saloon one Saturday night, he recognized an elderly man standing at the bar who, in his day, had the reputation of being the fastest gun in the West. The young cowboy took a place next to the old-timer, bought him a drink, and told him the story of his great ambition. "Do you think you could give me some tips?" he asked. The old man looked him up and down and said, "Well, For one thing, you're wearing your gun too high. Tie the holster a little lower down on your leg. Will that make me a better gunfighter? Asked the young man. Sure will, replied the old-timer. The young man did as he was told, stood up, whipped out his .44, and shot the bow tie off the piano player. That's terrific, said the hotshot. Got any more tips for me? Yep, said the old man. Cut a notch out of your holster where the hammer hits it. That'll give you a smoother draw. Will that make me a better gunfighter? Asked the younger man. You bet it will, said the old-timer. The young man took out his knife, cut the notch, stood up, drew his gun in a blur, then shot a cufflink off the piano player. Wow! Exclaimed the cowboy. I'm learning something here. Got any more tips? The old man pointed to a large can in a corner of the room. See that axle grease over there? Coat your gun with it. The young man went over to the can and smeared some of the grease on the barrel of his gun. No, said the old-timer. I mean smear it all over the gun, handle and all. Will that make me a better gunfighter? Asked the young man. The old-timer said, no, but when Wyatt gets done playing the piano, he's going to shove that gun up your behind, and it won't hurt as much if it's all greased up. A man and his wife were at odds and not talking to each other. In the evening, the man suddenly remembered that he needed his wife to wake him up the next day at 5 a.m. so he could make it in time for a business flight. Since he did not want to be the first to break the silence, he wrote to her on a piece of paper, "Please wake me up at 5 a.m.," and left the note on the bedside table. The next morning, the man woke up only to find that it was 9 o'clock, and he had missed the flight. He jumped out of bed furiously to find out why his wife had not awakened him and came across a note on his bedside table. The note read, "It's 5 o'clock, wake up." Sally was driving home from one of her business trips in northern Arizona when she saw an elderly woman walking on the side of the road. As the trip was a long and quiet one, she stopped the car and asked the woman if she would like a ride. With a silent nod of thanks, the woman got into the car. Resuming the journey, Sally tried in vain to make a bit of small talk with the woman. The old woman just sat silently, looking intently at everything she saw, studying every little detail, until she noticed a brown bag on the seat next to Sally. "What in bag?" asked the old woman. Sally looked down at the brown bag and said, "It's a bottle of wine. I got it for my husband." The woman was silent for another moment or two. Then, speaking with the quiet wisdom of an elder, she said, "Good trade." One man was reading the newspaper in the afternoon when his wife suddenly came out from behind him and hit him in the head with the pan. "Why did you do that?" he shouted. "I found a piece of paper in your coat pocket with the name Susie on it," she answered. "Honey, remember that last week I went out with friends to hang out at the racing track? Susie was the name of the horse I was betting on." The woman was silent. 3 days later, as he read the newspaper again, his wife emerged from behind him and hit him again on the head with the frying pan. "Why did you do that this time?" he shouted. "I just wanted to let you know. Your horse called." A rather attractive woman goes up to the bar in a quiet, rural pub. She gestures alluringly to the barman, who comes over immediately. When he arrives, she seductively signals that he should bring his face close to hers. When he does so, she begins to gently caress his beard, which is full and bushy. "Are you the manager?" she asks, softly stroking his face with both hands. "Actually, no," he replies. "Can you get him for me? I need to speak to him," she asks, running her hands up beyond his beard and into his hair. "I'm afraid I can't," breathes the barman, evidently getting a bit hot under the collar by this point. "Is there anything I can do?" "Yes, there is. I need you to give him a message," she continues huskily, touching his lips. "Tell him," she says, "that there is no toilet paper or hand soap in the ladies' room." A stingy old lawyer who had been diagnosed with a terminal illness was determined to prove the saying about money, "You can't take it with you," wrong. After much thought and consideration, the man finally figured out how to take at least some of his money with him when he died. He instructed his wife to go to the bank and withdraw enough money to fill 2 pillowcases. Then he directed her to take the bags of money to the attic and leave them directly above his bed. His plan was to reach out and grab the bags when he was ascending to heaven. Several weeks after the funeral, the deceased lawyer's wife, up in the attic cleaning, came upon the 2 pillowcases stuffed with cash. "Oh, that darned old fool!" she exclaimed. "I knew he should have had me put the money in the basement." A lawyer dies and goes to heaven. St. Peter, of course, is there, looking through the files and asking a few quick questions. "What sort of lawyer were you?" "Oh, I was a divorce attorney," was the reply. "Name?" asks St. Pete. The lawyer gives his name, and St. Peter finds his file. "Oh, yes, we've been expecting you. You've reached your allotted time span." The lawyer says, "I don't get it. How can that be? I'm only 48 years old." Pete looks again at the file and says, "Well, that's impossible." "Why do you say that?" asks the lawyer. "Well," says St. Peter, "we've been looking over your timesheets and the hours you've charged your clients. By our reckoning, you must be at least 117 years old." An elderly couple was having dinner at another couple's house. After their meal, the wives went into the kitchen. The 2 elderly gents were talking, and one says, "Last night we went out to a fabulous new restaurant that I'd highly recommend." The other man says, "What's the name of the restaurant?" The first man thinks long and hard with a furrowed brow, finally saying, "What is the name of that red flower you give to someone you love?" His friend replies, "A carnation." "No, the other one," the man says. His friend suggests, "The poppy." No, growls the man. "You know, the one that is red and has thorns." His friend says, "Do you mean a rose?" "Yes." "Thank you," the first man says. He then turns toward the kitchen and yells, "Rose, what's the name of that restaurant we went to last night?" A beautiful young model boarded a plane to New York with a ticket for the economy section. She looked at the seats in economy and then looked into the forward cabin at the luxurious first-class seats. Seeing that the first-class seats appeared to be much larger and more comfortable, she moved forward to the last empty seat in first class. The flight attendant checked her ticket and told the woman that her seat was in economy. The blonde replied, "I'm a famous model, and I've never had this problem before. I'm going to sit here all the way until we get to New York." Flustered, the flight attendant went to the cockpit and informed the captain of the problem. The captain went back and told the woman that her assigned seat was in economy. Again, the blonde replied, "I'm a famous model. I'm sitting here all the way to New York." The captain didn't want to cause a commotion and so returned to the cockpit to discuss the blonde problem with the co-pilot. The co-pilot said that he used to date a model like her and that he could take care of the problem. He then went back and briefly whispered something in the blonde's ear. She immediately got up and said, "Okay, thank you." She then hugged the co-pilot and rushed back to her seat in the economy section. The pilot and flight attendant, who were watching with rapt attention, asked the co-pilot what he had said to the woman. He replied, "I just told her that the first-class seats aren't going to New York." John's wife, refusing to give in to aging, goes out to buy some new cosmetics so she can look years younger. After spending some time applying miracle products to her face, she asks her husband, "Darling, honestly, if you didn't know me, how old would you think I am?" Looking at her carefully, John replied, "Judging from your skin 20, your hair 18, and your figure 25. "Oh, you flatterer," she gushed. Just as she was about to tell John his reward, he stops her and says, "Whoa, hold on there, sweetie." I haven't added them up yet. After a weekend vacation, a sergeant got to the military base only to find out that none of his soldiers made it on time. It took 3 hours before they started showing up. By then, he was about to explode with rage. He decided to summon each of them to his office to get an explanation. The first soldier walks in, and the sergeant asks, "Well, what's your excuse for showing up so late?" "Sorry, sir, I can explain. You see, I was late for the bus and had to hitchhike. No cars stopped. And then suddenly an old man driving a horse and buggy stops and offers me a ride. Well, you know, I couldn't refuse the man's kind gesture, and I got on. Only it took forever to get here, and that's why I was late." "Humph," said the surprised sergeant. "I guess that's a reasonable explanation." And he let the soldier go. He called the next soldier in and asked for his excuse. "Sorry, sir, I can explain. You see, I was late for the bus and had to hitchhike. Then this old woman with a horse and buggy stopped for me." And the soldier tells him the same story, that he was late because the buggy was so slow. One after another, all the soldiers file in and tell him the exact same story. They all felt too bad to say no and were late as a consequence. The last soldier then walks in, and the sergeant, now quite angry, says, "I suppose you hitchhike too?" His voice was dripping with sarcasm. "Yes, sir." "And I suppose you also got a ride?" "Yes, sir." "And I suppose it was on a horse and buggy?" "No, sir." "No?" asked the surprised sergeant. "No, sir, it was a 2014 Mercedes, sir." "Then why the heck were you late?" "We tried to make good time, sir," answered the soldier apologetically, "but the road was completely blocked with horses and buggies." A guy was staring at a girl's t-shirt with a cat design for quite a while. The girl finally asks, "Haven't you ever seen a cat before?" The guy grins and replies, "Oh, I've seen plenty of cats, but I've never seen one guarding milk like that before." An old man, a boy, and a donkey were going to town. The boy rode on the donkey, and the old man walked. As they went along, they passed some people who remarked it was a shame the old man was walking and the boy was riding. The man and boy thought maybe the critics were right, so they changed positions. Later, they passed some people that remarked, "What a shame he makes that little boy walk." They then decided they both would walk. Soon they passed some more people who thought they were stupid to walk when they had a decent donkey to ride, so they both rode the donkey. Now they passed some people that shamed them by saying how awful it was to put such a load on a poor donkey. The boy and man said they were probably right, so they decided to carry the donkey. As they crossed the bridge, they lost their grip on the animal, and he fell into the river and drowned. Animal, a little girl was in church with her mother when she started feeling ill. "Mommy," she said, "can we leave now?" "No," her mother replied. "Well, I think I have to throw up," exclaimed the girl. "Then go out the front door and around to the back of the church and throw up behind a bush," said her mother. After about 60 seconds, the little girl returned to her seat. "Did you throw up?" her mother asked. "Yes," the little girl replied. "How could you have gone all the way to the back of the church and returned so quickly?" her mother asked. "I didn't have to go out of the church, Mommy." They have a box next to the front door that says, "For the sick." The light turned yellow just in front of him. He did the right thing, stopping at the crosswalk, even though he could have beaten the red light by accelerating through the intersection. The tailgating woman was furious and honked her horn, screaming in frustration as she missed her chance to get through the intersection, dropping her cell phone and makeup. As she was still in mid-rant, she heard a tap on her window and looked up into the face of a very serious police officer. The officer ordered her to exit her car with her hands up. He took her to the police station, where she was searched, fingerprinted, photographed, and placed in a holding cell. After a couple of hours, a policeman approached the cell and opened the door. She was escorted back to the booking desk, where the arresting officer was waiting with her personal effects. He said, "I'm very sorry for this mistake. You see, I pulled up behind your car while you were blowing your horn, flipping off the guy in front of you and cussing a blue streak at him. I noticed the "What Would Jesus Do" bumper sticker, the "Choose Life" license plate holder, and the "Follow Me to Sunday School" bumper sticker, and the chrome-plated Christian fish emblem on the trunk, so naturally. I assumed you had stolen the car. Bob, aged 92, and Mary, aged 89, were excited about their decision to get married. While out for a stroll to discuss the wedding, they passed a drugstore. Bob suggested they go in. Bob asked to speak to the pharmacist. He explained they're about to get married and asked, "Do you sell heart medication?" "Of course we do," the pharmacist replied. "Medicine for rheumatism?" "Definitely," he said. "How about Viagra?" "Of course." "Medicine for memory problems, arthritis, jaundice?" "Yes, the works." "What about vitamins, sleeping pills, Geritol, antacids?" "Absolutely." "Do you sell wheelchairs and walkers?" "All speeds and sizes." "Good," Bob said to the pharmacist. "We'd like to register for our wedding gifts here, please." A famous British explorer was invited to a seaside town to give a talk about his adventures in the African jungle. Can you imagine a people so primitive that they love to eat the embryos of a certain bird and slices of the belly of a certain animal? The explorer asked the assembled audience. Its members gasped and looked around at each other in horror. They also grind up grass seed, make it into a paste, burn it over a fire, then smear the result with a greasy mess that's extracted from the mammary fluid of certain other animals. The explorer continued. "Utterly barbaric. How can people live like that?" said a lone voice. "All I've described is a breakfast of bacon, eggs, and buttered toast, sir," retorted the explorer. While dads may be glad to see their daughter happy or in love, when it comes to dating, there are some hard-line rules that no suitor should cross unless they want to meet the kind of special wrath only angry dads can dish out. Here are 10 rules from a father to a teenage daughter's boyfriend. Rule 1. If you pull into my driveway and honk, you'd better be delivering a package because you're sure as heck not picking anything up. Rule 2. You do not touch my daughter in front of me. You may glance at her, so long as you do not peer at anything below her neck. If you cannot keep your eyes or hands off of my daughter's body, I will remove them for you. Rule 3. I am aware that it is considered fashionable for boys of your age to wear their trousers so loosely that they appear to be falling off their hips. Please don't take this as an insult, but you and all of your friends are complete idiots. Still, I want to be fair and open-minded about this issue, so I propose this compromise. You may come to the door with your underwear showing and your pants 10 sizes too big, and I will not object. However, in order to ensure that your clothes do not, in fact, come off during the course of your date with my daughter, I will take my electric nail gun and fasten your trousers securely in place to your waist. Rule 4. I'm sure you've been told that in today's world, sex without utilizing a barrier method of some kind can kill you. Let me elaborate. When it comes to sex, I am the barrier, and I will kill you. Rule 5. It is usually understood that in order for us to get to know each other, we should talk about sports, politics, and other issues of the day. Please do not do this. The only information I require from you is an indication of when you expect to have my daughter safely back at my house, and the only word I need from you on this subject is early. Rule 6. I have no doubt you are a popular fellow with many opportunities to date other girls. This is fine with me as long as it is okay with my daughter. Otherwise, once you have gone out with my little girl, you will continue to date no one but her until she is finished with you. If you make her cry, I will make you cry. Rule 7. As you stand in my front hallway waiting for my daughter to appear, and more than an hour goes by, do not sigh and fidget. If you want to be on time for the movie, you should not be dating. My daughter is putting on her makeup, a process that can take longer than painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Instead of just standing there, why don't you do something useful, like changing the oil in my car? Rule 8. The following places are not appropriate for a date with my daughter. Places where there are beds, sofas, or anything softer than a wooden stool. Places where there are no parents, policemen, or nuns within eyesight. Places where there is darkness. Places where there is dancing, holding hands, or happiness. Places where the ambient temperature is warm enough to induce my daughter to wear shorts, tank tops, midriff t-shirts, or anything other than overalls, a sweater, and a goose-down parka zipped up to her throat. Movies with a strong romantic or sexual theme are to be avoided. Movies that feature chainsaws are okay. Hockey games are okay. Old folks' homes are better. Rule 9. Do not lie to me. I may appear to be a pot-bellied, balding, middle-aged, dim-witted has-been. But on issues relating to my daughter, I am the all-knowing, merciless God of your universe. If I ask you where you are going and with whom, you have one chance to tell me the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. I have a shotgun, a shovel, and 5 acres behind the house. Do not trifle with me. Rule 10. Be afraid. Be very afraid. It takes very little for me to mistake the sound of your car in the driveway for a chopper coming in over a rice paddy near Hanoi. When my Agent Orange starts acting up, the voices in my head frequently tell me to clean the guns as I wait for you to bring my daughter home. As soon as you pull into the driveway, you should exit your car with both hands in plain sight. Speak the perimeter password, announce in a clear voice that you have brought my daughter home safely and early, then return to your car. There is no need for you to come inside. The camouflaged face at the window is mine.
If you're still here, I'm thrilled you enjoyed the joke. Subscribing is a simple way to stay connected. Join our community and make me a happy friend.